months to 26 months from start to finish. Now, I have been able to fructify the items, identify an item, and I have been able to deliver the item and develop the source in just plain 18 months. That's something which is just not possible anywhere. This is the shortest route. The last point that I'll impress upon is that the entire vendor base, our partners from the industry, are getting involved with me right from the very first stage. What that implies is that the partners from the industry are actually interacting. They are looking at the items which are needed for indigenization 3 months before the AON, 4 months before an RFP, 6 months before the supply order comes up. Because there's an entire process on within the system. You have to go through your AON, the RFPs, and finally go through the L1, L2, make 2 sources. That's exactly what I'm doing now. Multiple sources, parallel, and I place the supply order. In the very first stage, wherein we are carrying out the identification of the item, is done in the very first stage, wherein a forum is in place, which is called an indigenization subcommittee meeting, wherein I am carrying out these meetings all over the country. It's not only here in Delhi, it is there in all CODs. And I have got 4 satellite stations at Jabalpur, Ondh, Pune, and Bangalore, looking at everything right from your electronics to your vehicles, include the tracked vehicles, which goes to include your tanks and the kinds. I've got the entire of armaments, and I've got the entire of engineering equipment. I've got a total of 25 platforms that I'm looking at, which I'm addressing at the moment. With this, I'll request you, all those who are interested, to check out the CPP portal, DOI, Directorate of Indigenization. Check out my live RFPs as on date. Come and interact with me. I'm at West Block 3, Arkepuram, 2nd floor. And further, the procedures, processes, clarification on various issues, kindly please do come. You're most welcome. And it will go a long way if in case we have a larger vendor base. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier. Friends, at the end of the session, I'll summarize. Our learned speakers have told us the tremendous opportunities available for the Indian industry, whether it is SME or MSME sector. And we have heard the view of the government also through Secretary Mr. Ashok Gupta. He has told us the steps being taken by the government and the roadmap of the government for the future, for the simplification of the procedures. And now just Brigadier Bhalla has also told us about the procedure simplification in the Directorate of Indigenization. So, and since we are already late, we are not having the time for the question and answer session. Let me request you all to please take your questions with the speakers during the lunch, since they will be joining us for lunch now.
Thank you so much, sirs. We have a small brief session before we proceed for lunch. So the next session, thank you so much, sirs, for the informative session. The next session for the day is on government synergy to next level. Request the chairperson to please join us on the stage, Mr. Rahul Chaudhary. Mr. Rahul Chaudhary, could you please have you on the stage? Mr. Rahul Chaudhary, CEO, Tata Power SED and Chairman, Defence Innovators and Industry Association, along with our panel speakers, Sri Prakash Nanda, Editor-in-Chief, Uday India, CMD E. Mukesh Bhargava, Vice President, L&T Limited, Mr. Stephen Lavigne, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, India Thales, and Mr. Nick Khanna, President, India, Raytheon International Incorporation. Could we please have this panelist and the chairperson on the stage, please? It's just a brief session before we proceed for lunch. Welcome, sirs. Let's have a huge round of applause for all the panelist members, please.
presentation. I need to load the presentation.
I will come last. Shall they start so that I need to that they will give it. उधर कनेक्ट कर दे वो लोग बताना पड़ेगा.
Welcome to an important session on taking the industry government's energy to the next level. And let me ask my good friends from Thales, Stephen Living, to start this discussion. As we are all standing before the lunch, so each speaker just 5 minutes.
नहीं को रिमूवेबल डिस्प्ले जाओ.
Thank you, Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. So I understand I got a challenge to tell you in 5 minutes what is Thales in India, and what is the ambition of Thales in India, and on top of that to give some recommendation for a better synergy between defense sector, industry, and government. I'm okay to take this challenge, but be careful, I'm a fast speaker. So if I see some of you, just losing my flow of thought, I will slow down. So just a couple of words about Thales in India. I'm Stefan Laving. I'm representing Thales and being in charge of the sales and marketing activities of this corporation. We are a global corporation. We are obviously operating into the defense market. We are present all over the year with 67,000 employees all over the world, and we are basically a 15 billion euros company. Our field of play are everything which is linked with defense and security, but on top of that, we are a major player in transportation, and it is the case in India as well. Thales in India, our story started in 1953, where we are pleased to be one of the historic partners of the defense armed forces in India, where we sold, I was told, some radios and radars that lead us to the first transfer of technology that we operated in the country, and we are very proud to say that this transfer of technology led to a complete industry, because this industry is now called Bell, and we are quite happy to be part of this history. Also, Thales in India is today a couple of hundred of people that we are employing directly, but we are also operating mainly throughout joint ventures. One of them will be with Bell. I told about my historical partner. We are very proud of this joint venture, and I will come back on that when I will talk about the business model. Obviously, we have partnerships with private sectors as well, L&T being one of them, and Samtel for the avionics side. Our ambition. We have already a lot of success in India, and we are very honored to serve the armed forces. All the free services have some Thales equipment on board of their platforms. Obviously, the most recent one being the Rafale deal, for which we are providing around 20-25% of the deal in total. What is our ambition from India? I told you Thales is a global company. When I say we're a global company, of course we are originating from France, but we are operating in 76 countries, and when I say we are operating, it's not only having a sales representation over there, it's having a real industrial capability. In India it is already started, and we are wanting to make it bigger. If something that we really welcome is this Make in India initiative, where we do see a lot of benefit around that, because we do think that's the only way to enter into a sustainable procurement of equipment. So we very welcome this initiative, and we want to make it bigger into growing our footprint in India. I was saying that I was quite happy with my partnership with Bell, and just to take it as an example on the way we want to operate. You know, we launched this joint venture a couple of years ago, and we launched at the last DEF Expo a product which is Faroes. I just want to take this example at the way we do think we want to operate in India. This is not only a product that we are going to produce in India. This is not only a transfer of productions that we are going to make in India. This is not only a transfer of technology of something already existing. This is something that we want to invent from India and to sell to India, but to sell abroad. Okay, I will not reveal what is the share of our business plan dedicated to the export market, but this is really the ambition we want to have. Thales, by history, is what we call a multi-domestic company, meaning that we are operating from various countries in which we have significant customers. So that's really where we want to go there. This business model that I could elaborate more at the break if somebody is interested is really the one we want to go to. And so we very welcome the initiative launched by the government those recent years, and to make it bigger into allowing some rooms for foreign investors to launch and to develop products in India. If I got one message, maybe room for discussion or room for talk for later on, we are very much interested into the new procurement path. I make it in 1 minute, promise. We are very much interested into the new procurement path, like the MAKE procedure, for example. We may very much welcome every initiative which allows a foreign direct investment above 49%, but feel maybe a little frustration of being prevented to access to this MAKE procedure through a local representation which is above 49% of foreign investment. And I think that concludes my challenge of 5 minutes. Did I make it? Thank you very much.
May I now request Mr. Prakash Nanda, Editor-in-Chief, Uday, India, to address the August gathering.
Thank you, Chair, my fellow panelists here in the dais, and ladies and gentlemen. In the previous session, some panelists very rightly pointed out that instead of defense production, it should have been defense industry. I think one of the representatives of the organizers here today, I personally think that is a very wonderful suggestion, and we should have taken that into account. In a way, this is something also was highlighted by, is it of the right height? Yeah. It was highlighted by none other than our late President Abdul Kalam, and let me quote him here. He had said, "The need of the hour is to establish a military industry complex at the national level, enlisting large and medium industries to be partners along with defense PSUs as its members." And incidentally, Dr. Kalam had said this just in a few days before he left this world at an event organized by none other than ASSOCHAM, which is organizing this event today. But then what exactly he meant by a MIC? A MIC for Dr. Kalam was not collaboration simply between Indian PSUs and the Indian corporate houses. Again, I am quoting him. Encouraging high technology tie-ups and joint ventures between India and other global defense industries will achieve not only competitiveness, but also envisages the product for export, he had underlined. In my considered view, the former president was bang on. MICs these days are getting increasingly globalized. Take, for instance, the case of the United States, the world's foremost military power. Incidentally, the term military industry complex or military industrial complex was coined in the United States by President Eisenhower during the Cold War. Actually, he had not said it because the American military industry has so far developed through 3 stages. And before the Cold War, the first stage was there, which lasted, in fact, the Second World War, the first stage lasted from 1787 to 1941. And it consisted totally of the government-owned arsenals and seapads. However, with the United States participating in the Second World War, President Roosevelt established the War Production Board by conscripting the major private industries, particularly those in the automobile sector, into the wartime service. But after the war ended, not only these private companies such as Boeing and General Motors stayed on and consolidated their involved in the military sector, but they are also joined by others like AT&T, General Electric, and IBM. One of the important features of the second era was that Pentagon financed the private sector, which in turn created world-class technologies that were for use not only by the military, but also for the ordinary citizens. One can cite in this regard examples of drone, night vision goggles, GPS in cars, and what is most important, the internet. But when the Cold War came, and that is the third stage, which is undergoing at the very moment, what precisely happened was that some changes took place. First, the industry shifted from diversified conglomerates and was managed by defense-only firms. Secondly, the contribution of the Pentagon, both financially and technologically, has been declining thanks to the shrinking defense budgets. As a result, and this is the third feature, the American MICs are increasingly buying commercial technologies, either buying or giving these technology-provided shares, such as cloud computing, cybersecurity, nanotechnology, and so on. Just see how the Googles has acquired Boston Dynamics that has created Big Dog, a four-legged robot that can support. So my point is this, what they are now saying, that even this third phase is not adequate enough. And for this, they now have to go outside. Because the Pentagon, which, as I said, was, the government was encouraging the private sector and was financing them, is not in a position to do so. So that is why the latest debate there, and I am giving this American example precisely because of this, that also applies to other big military industries elsewhere. What they said, and I'm quoting here William J. Lynn III, the former US Deputy Secretary, and he says, keeping in mind that the futures are inextricably intertwined, the United States has to look beyond its borders to turn this fourth era to its advantage. And I think that is the key. Now that last week, India and US became major defense partner countries, there are scopes for these joint collaborations. And as speakers in the last session did talk about the fact that export, they only will not be producing defense items for the domestic or the consumption by the end users here in India, but also will be a major exporter. And here the point is, and everybody has talked about exports and the problems they are in. The only point, I just know 1 minute, sir. The only point that I'd like to make is that what is the main case now? That take the case of DRDO. DRDO only manufactures items for the Indian military. But there are certain times, many of the items that it has developed are not accepted by our armed forces. The point is, no problem, if they are not up to the benchmark required by our own military forces, why can't they actually send these products outside? Maybe the requirement of the quality requirements of our armed forces is different from the quality requirements of the armed forces in the neighboring areas, say Southeast Asia, say West Asia. Why can't they, like Pinaka missile, the army rejected it, but there is no market for Pinaka missiles there in West Asia. My point is that why the DRDO should not be given more liberty and autonomy to create arms weapons for third countries. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, may I request my friend and Nick Khanna, who has been an India friend for a very, very long time from Raytheon, to give his views.
Thank you, Rahul. And esteemed dignitaries on the dais, ladies and gentlemen, I have 5 minutes to try and do 3 things. Okay? I'm going to talk about some of the things that the government has done that has helped us achieve self-reliance in terms of streamlining and recommending changes to the defense procurement procedure in order to bring it more in line with the Make in India initiative. Now, this has been done, of course, all of us understand this, to create a vibrant domestic manufacturing sector and to create an export capability. The Raksha Mantri's recent trips to countries like Vietnam and Mauritius are clear examples of that. The second thing I'm going to talk about is the US-India defense relationship, which has deepened and grown tremendously over the last decade and a half. And the affirmation of the major defense partner is a very big deal for the United States, and it applies very positively to all of us, in terms of us, the Raytheon, and in terms of our Indian partners. And then third, I'll just touch on a few things where we still have challenges in terms of US industry and Indian industry. So, Secretary DP, I was with him at a Make in India event in Bhubaneswar 2 Fridays ago. And he highlighted all of these facts which he gave you today. Okay, 140 AONs in the last 2 years, 85 to Indian vendors. He talked a lot about how procurement from Indian vendors is actually up. It's 71% now in 2016. But I want to reiterate my friend Sukhwinder's point. Everybody needs orders. Foreign OEMs, Indian industry, we need orders to try and really fructify the kind of things that we're talking about. We can keep discussing all of these things, but unless you have more regularity and frequency in the DAC meetings and more decision-making in actually moving along long-delayed procurement programs, large capital-intensive procurement programs, we're just going to be talking amongst each other, okay? Comrade Bhargav actually brought up the question about strategic partnerships, right? We've all been looking for that announcement. So I think that's a key, sort of a guidepost as to how some of this is going to be implemented as well. There's $2 billion in terms of offset objects, sort of offset obligation, which has already been done. There's $8 billion to be obligated over the next 8 years. And so the building blocks for defense production, capability, absorption, capacity, skills, development, training, certifications, all of this is actually happening between us and our IOPs, MSMEs, and the DPSUs. That there's a lot of work that's actually happening behind the scenes to be able to help make some of that happen. So with the evolution of Buy India, IDDM, Buy and Make India, and the recategorization of Make, we see several positives in the DPP that help us get there. Raytheon's had a long and distinguished, sort of a period here, more than 50 years, in terms of providing cutting-edge technologies and meeting India's evolving defense space and civil aviation needs. Dr. Carter was just here, our Secretary of Defense, and he met Raksha Mantri ji for the, get this, 7th time. Dr. Carter himself said, he is the defense minister that I've met the most with. We've had several things that have happened now. You've got a defense framework agreement, which was signed in 2015, that lays the blueprint for collaboration between our defense establishments. You had a logistics exchange memorandum of agreement, which sort of sets the path for additional opportunities for practical engagement. And then you had this designation of a major defense partner of the United States, which is a very big deal, as I said. It basically, sort of heralds the U.S. treating India on par with its closest allies and partners, who was already, fighting alongside with in very troubled areas of the world. You've also got the Defense Trade and Technology Initiative, which have got Pathfinder programs. You've got working groups as part of that. You've got a lot of engagement in terms of science and sort of technology cooperation is up with DRDO. And we're working a lot with private sector today to try and fulfill some of those co-production, co-development ideas. There are new programs coming down the pipeline for DTTI as well. So that sort of sets the framework for a strong underpinning of a defense relationship. What needs to be done? So to be able to achieve this and to be able to look at Indian partnerships, not just for our Indian programs, but to be able to look at partnerships, both strategic partnerships, tactical supplier teaming, and then sort of a well-integrated, a partnership strategy which includes DPSUs, large private sector companies, and then MSMEs. We need to have certain things in place. So one broad area is ease of doing business. We've talked a lot about that through the chambers, and that includes a whole bunch of things. Transfer of taxes, setting up of offices, customs, excise duties, offsets, the whole management and the sort of execution of offsets by DOMW and by MOD is a major sort of element of that. We've also talked about as the sort of increase for indigenous content under Buy Indian sort of goes up, 30 to 40, 30 to 50, and IDDM, the taxes and duties of IC should be included for indigenous content. There's also going to be a need for us to work very closely with our Indian partners on how we measure indigenous content. That's going to be a key aspect of this as well. And then, last but not least, two things. I'll take the point from Jan Widerstrom. We as the United States, and I can say this very, very confidently about my company, we are providing latest generation combat-proven, battle-tested capabilities. Okay, not just technology transfer, capabilities. And then we're offering to build the roadmap and provide the building blocks to help India move down the self-sufficient gradient. Now, that has many, many manifestations to it. But if you look at all the things I've sort of stated today, if you look at that as an aspect of the long-term partnership, then I think if we can get the right support from the government, from the MOD, through the chambers, we sort of talk about the various sort of challenges we have in terms of delays, a timeline, contract process approvals, things like that, then I think